Reliance Industries plans to enter the dairy and frozen foods market. This will be the conglomerate's second stab at the segment. It had earlier entered the dairy space in 2007, but later sold it to Heritage Foods in 2016. RIL's move close on the heels of it relaunching the 50-year-old beverage brand Coca-Cola at a likely lower price than competitors Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Will RIL's Geo playbook help it capture this segment also? We have with us Harish, Bijoor, Business and Brand Strategy Specialist, and my colleague Rakesh Khar, Editor, Business and Economy, TV9 Network, to address this and more. Harish, let me start by asking you, and of course you've seen the brand evolve over the years. What is the playbook that Reliance follows? I mean, this was known as an oil company. It moved on to data. Now we're talking about beverages as well as dairy. So what is the Reliance playbook here?
Well, if you really look at Reliance, we are really talking of an organization that has a large plan out there. And the plan is to really occupy the imagination of literally every sector. And I think the early success that it got and what it did to what it's likely to attain in the future is going to be about spreading, the FMCG category in a deep and meaningful manner. FMCG, retail, everybody understands this to be the deepest segments that anybody can enter. And I think the Reliance ambition in dairy is totally geared to this because we're a large dairy market of consumers for a start.
Okay, so Harish, how do you see the role of RS Sodhi now being inducted in RIL? Of course, we've all known Mr. Sodhi as a very able successor to Dr. Kurian Verghese, and together they've sort of shaped Amul as as a great success story,
Yes,
homebred
absolutely.
success story. So how do you see
Absolutely.
this play out
If
for
you
Reliance?
really look at RS, well, if you really look at RS Sodhi and the fact that he is a player who's been with Amul, the Gujarat Cooperative Marketing Federation for a long period of time. He has worked very closely, certainly, with Dr. Verghese Kurian, and that was the first time I met him. And if you
Okay.
really look at it, I think he has the dairy play in his pocket in terms of the dairy playbook. So I think, expect humongous action from Reliance. If you really look at it, the Reliance game plan is always a simple one. Let's begin. Let's start something big. Let's get the best people from that line of work into my company. The same thing has happened with Coca-Cola. The same thing has happened with dairy. And I think, one can look for very exciting times. When one looks at, this entire 68 billion US dollar market industry to pan out as a domestic play and hopefully an export play as well.
Okay. Rakesh, let me come to you. You've, of course, studied this company, followed it as a journalist for many years. You've seen the transitions from Dhirubhai Ambani to both the sons and the sons splitting out. Now, one is sometimes compelled to think that when Anil Ambani started the telecom business, it was seen at some levels a little ahead of its time. The market had not matured to that extent. Eventually, it went on with a technology called WLL, which did not really do wonders in India and the world over. But when Mukesh Ambani entered the telecom business, we were actually already looking at a saturated market. We were looking at a market that had enough players making good money, making decent ARPU, and nobody would have really thought that Jio is going to come and disrupt the telecom space the way it actually went ahead and disrupted it. So in the case of dairy, and we'll come to Coca-Cola also, in the case of dairy, we have players like Mother Dairy, we have players like Nestle, Amul, all very successful brands. So what is in it really for Reliance to get into the dairy business?
First of all, I mean, dairy is a consumer product which is right in your kitchen, right in your home, right in your mind space, right on your, the menu book. So it's top of the mind. So whenever we talk of Reliance shifting or pivoting completely away from a B2B business to a B2C business, dairy is a great fit, obviously, Kartik. And you mentioned Anil Ambani, leading the telecom business. I personally feel, but for the spat between the family, that would also have run its course in the right direction.
Okay.
But that's history now. We do know that with Jio, Mukesh Ambani has absolutely changed and disrupted the market when it comes to consumer business, not just for the telecom. He has set a template which is now the guiding principle globally when it comes to doing consumer business and actually lording over it. You're right, Kartik, when you mentioned that it was a fairly saturated market with three big players. BSNL, even if we dismiss it, but between Vodafone and Idea and we had a fairly Airtel was the big guy. They had an aspiration to be the second largest. I remember a big press conference by Sunil Bharti Mittal, when they acquired an African brand, and they mentioned that they wanted to be the second largest telecom player. And then suddenly, we know where the rest of them are. So the model is disruption. The model is get the consumer whatever it takes. You've seen the replay of the Jio play in case of the IPL. They got the digital rights, well as their competition got the broadcast rights.
And we saw it in the World Cup as well. We saw the Football World Cup also streaming absolutely free, no subscription, no email, no OTP, nothing required on Jio Cinema.
And Kartik, no guesses to point out where the audiences are in the IPL.
Absolutely.
So that is going to happen in dairy. I'm not saying that Amul will get discounted right away. But they got the best guy from Amul, that time it looked a little sudden that he's leaving. Right. But I think Reliance had a plan. I don't know whether, Mr. Sodhi had a plan. I have had an occasion to speak to Mr. Sodhi repeatedly over the last few years. And we interviewed him for, News9 Live as well. And he never looked like a man who was tired or retired, quoting from Mr. Vajpayee's very famous sentence. So I think he's restarting his innings, and the milk and the dairy business is getting a fresh start, Kartik.
Okay. And talk to us about Campa Cola. I don't know, Harish, if you're still with us, but I'll just stick with Rakesh for a bit. And Rakesh, talk to us about Campa Cola. I mean, this is a brand, I grew up drinking in the late 80s, maybe early 90s. Until 1993, I remember I was on a school trip to Agra, and that was the first city where Coca-Cola had made a re-entry. And I remember back then, children sort of, my classmates filling up water bottles, 2-liter water bottles with Coca-Cola and taking it back home. That legacy has endured for 30 years plus now, and disrupting or sort of taking on a behemoth like Coca-Cola or PepsiCo head on. How do you do that in a market where these are not just Indian homegrown brands, unlike Mother Dairy or Amul in the case of milk? These are global behemoths. How do you take them on in a market as dense as India?
I think what Jio has told us is that there are three things that they follow very rigorously. One is the emotion. India is extremely, emotional consumer. A lot of impulse buying, and legacy brands have a lot of connect when it comes to the end consumer. Second is pricing. Pricing is a big takeaway with Reliance. They did Jio SIM cards free almost for about a year till they did the big ticket, rollout with the three global majors, where actually in COVID, globally, Reliance brought about some of the biggest M&A deals, and all those have actually fructified now. And Jio is the largest consumer company in this country in that sense. So I guess emotion, pricing, and innovation also. People may fault the start days for Jio as a classic example, but over a period of time, Jio as a service has improved. Of course, it can do much better given the volume and the base it has. But having said that, I think the focus on consumer business, and what is important, Kartik, you have to point out also is that it's the division of responsibilities within the family is so profound and so accurate in the sense that there's no confusion there. So there is a focused Reliance retail responsibility with Isha, and I think that means that there are really large plans for the retail business, of which actually dairy is a part now.
Okay. Now, talk to me about pricing, Rakesh. It's easy at some level to undercut the prices of Campa Cola. It has a long shelf life. The supply chain is a little easier. In the case of milk, where do you get the milk producers from? Of course, we've seen the milk dairies in Gujarat. We've seen the milk dairies, the farmer community in Punjab, Moga, where Nestle procures from. These are supply chains which are already very well locked in with the distributor and the producer and the back-end supply chain. In the case of Reliance, how do you see the back-end, the supply chain really panning out?
It's going to be interesting. I don't have an answer to your question right away, but in comparison to Coca-Cola, even in comparison to the telecom business, this is going to be the most difficult business, because the bulk is with one major player, which is Amul. And then we're reading a story today in Karnataka where actually
Nandini.
Nandini versus Amul is panning out as an election issue.
Right.
So in that sense, there are strong local brands. There is Verka, there is one in Bombay, I'm forgetting the name of the brand, which is very, very popular there. So how do you manage these strong local regional brands, and how do you manage behemoths like Mother Dairy and Amul? I don't know what the plan is, but I think what they did in the cable business or the television business, they bought Den and the big ticket MSOs. Reliance bought those companies. I don't know whether that kind of a plan is on the anvil when it comes to, so to say, looking at the back end of the supply chain, controlling it. Like telecom, like media, it is controlling the pipeline. If they're able to do that, then believe me, Reliance has a winner in its hand. But it's much more difficult than the other two businesses that we're discussing, Kartik, right away.
Right. So, Harish, let me bounce that off you. Harish, how does it pan out? Do you think the pure unit economics and the selling price of dairy products is going to make a killing for Reliance?
It's not going to be an easy game because there are two portions of the dairy business. One of it, the way I divide it, is solid versus the liquid.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, what I'm talking about is the fact that it's a very large liquid market. If you look at the consumption of milk across the developed world, India is the largest consumer of milk. Consumes some 85 million metric tons of milk. And the nearest competitor to us is the European Union, which is about 23.8 million metric tons.
Right.
We are a huge liquid milk consuming country.
Right.
And if you're a liquid milk consuming country, it means that you're at the bottom of the pyramid value addition. Any player who wants to have a market in this country must establish himself as a dominant player in the liquid market. That's tough because this country is governed by a set of cooperators, milk unions, to dominate the scenario. My view would be that Reliance will focus more on the solid part of the market.
Okay.
They will really look at the value-added market. Anything that's solid is milk powder is solid.
Right.
Of course, cheese is solid.
Right.
Everything else that goes upwards is solid.
Right.
Actually, a solid play, they're getting to a liquid play, coming to a point of time when they can actually compete, or I don't know what else, outcompete the dairy farmers who actually manages business.
But the competition, even on the solid side, is fairly tight, and that is a category where you also have a lot of fringe players as well as international players coming in. So, Go Cheese, for example, to my best knowledge, is not into the liquid milk business. Similarly, you have these modern outlets opening which are selling everything from craft cheese to all the variety available of frozen milk products, including cheese, cream cheese, butter, etc., which do have a niche audience as well here in India. So even in the solid produce space, the competition is fairly tight. So what is the end game here for Reliance? Do they want to look at creating a premium product? That doesn't seem to go very well with their DNA of doing business. Or is it going to be a mass product? And then if it does become a mass product, what are you competing on if solid is the category you want to focus on as compared to liquid?
Understanding the Reliance play in any category that it gets into, Reliance is never happy being a niche player.
Yeah.
And to that extent, I don't think Reliance will focus only on the solid play. And but it's a step-by-step kind of a move which can happen, wherein somebody enters the solid first and then dominates the liquid, then makes inroads into liquid. Reliance can wait for a long, long period of time. To that extent, the dairy play in India take a long, long time to pan out. Therefore, expect certainly entry into the value-added segment. Don't ever think that Reliance is going to be a niche player.
Right.
Reliance is never satisfied with niche. Reliance is about disruption. Disrupting the dairy economy in this country is possibly a game plan. But of course, the industry has very strong farmer bodies and milk unions. It's not going to be an easy play in whatever is attempted.
Okay, not going to be an easy play. What about the Campa-Cola business? What about the aerated beverages business? That definitely seems like an easier business to enter given the advantages you have on the supply side. So how do you see Reliance really competing head-on with the likes of Coca-Cola and PepsiCo?
That you're absolutely right. It's going to be an easier play, in the sense that, it is going to be, as a start, for a start, it's going to be a price play. And price is going to make a difference. And if you really look at the market in India, it's one, a price market. Secondly, there are terrific positioning options for the brand to occupy. Because India does not have a Desi Cola, which is pan-Indian. And Reliance...
Well, India did have Thumbs Up, which again got bought over by
Yes,
Coca-Cola. So we did have a Desi success story in Thumbs Up, which is no longer Desi anymore with Coca-Cola. So, of course, you've got a Desi brand and you've got two Videshi brands. And now we are talking about a 30-year-old brand called Campa-Cola being revived. So how's that going to pan out for the consumer?
Very simply, not talking about Thumbs Up as having been a Desi in imagery. So, Desi Cola in imagery terms. It was as fast-paced as any multinational cola that was in the market. Talking a different story. The story I'm talking about is the story of Bindu Cola. Talking the story of every Banta that emerges, every Goli soda that emerges out of this country.
Right.
I'm talking about the new attitude in the country of Desi revival. And that is Desi Cola for me.
Okay.
So never was a Desi Cola for me.
Okay. Sure, point taken. Rakesh, let me come back to you and help me understand, this aggressive sort of mode that Reliance is on right now, trying to grow inorganically by acquiring brands, by getting into industries that were traditionally not known to be Reliance specific industries. Whether you talk about, maybe buying Hamleys or now going after Campa-Cola and this entire market. What does this tell you about the new generation of the Ambanis coming into the business? Do you think this is Mukesh Ambani calling the shots, or these are new ideas by the new generation?
I think it's a great blend that the family has got into. I mean, I think one must give them credit. It's smooth as of now, so far so good, and it's shaping up pretty well. I think they're combining, because Mukesh Ambani has formally gone on record to give credit for Jio to his two kids, because, apparently when they came back, they'd studied abroad, and they found that the internet connection was, it sucked in India. He's gone on record to say that I had two, VPNs or whatever connections we had at home, and they didn't really work well. So that's where the idea of Jio germinated. So in that sense, there's great democratization of ideas at Reliance. That's what it looks like from the outside. One doesn't have an inside information. And aggression is part of Reliance's game plan. I don't think it's today. It was yesterday, and it probably would intensify tomorrow, Kartik. And they don't want to be in the business if they're not number one or number two. So that applies to dairy, that applies to Campa-Cola. And they are great storytellers. I think with Jio's success, they've been emboldened to even take some missteps. I wouldn't call any of these missteps because we don't have the visibility of the full business plan, but I think they're ready to jump into it. And from a Manish Malhotra to the brands you Hamle, they're out there shopping globally and in the domestic market to try and see the ecosystem is controlled by them. I repeat, the pipeline. If they have the pipeline, they'll be able to control the business plan, because the idea is to reach the consumer. How best you reach him? I think options, choice, pricing, and innovation in terms of the product. I think they might really do something very interesting, if not funny, or it may be funny because that's the younger generation's appetite to look at consumers. They look at them very irreverentially. That's how I look at it. They might do something very different with Campa-Cola. And on the dairy piece, I don't have information, but my estimation, Kartik, is that they would probably go premium to begin with. And then I agree with Harish, they'll go for the liquid piece a little later. By that time, they would probably have a better idea of the entire back end. And let's also remember that Reliance didn't have a great experience with the fruits and vegetables business, partly because in Uttar Pradesh, that's where they started. There was a political tussle over it, and they had to shut down those retail outlets because there was an outcry. To begin with, there was also a sense of negativity with Jio Mart, And one reason that really hasn't taken off fully to the expectation of the shareholders and the Reliance promoters is some resistance on the ground in terms of messaging. So I think with the dairy, they might again run into that bit of a problem unless and until they really look at going back, at the back end and controlling the person who is actually controlling the outflow of Amul, the milk. Right. And milk also has an additional challenge in terms of production. There is a disease which is spreading, and I don't know whether anyone has a full solution on that. So milk production, growing demand for milk in its various avatars is both an opportunity and a challenge. I think they have some aces up their sleeves, or else it could be a little difficult.
Okay, Harish, let me come back to you. Reliance did enter the dairy business back in 2007, hung around for almost a decade, sold it out in 2016. What has changed? Of course, we know what has changed at Reliance, and there are new ideas like Rakesh mentioned with the new leadership also, trying to find its feet in the company. But in the Indian dairy market, what has changed between, let's say, the decade of 2007 to 2016 to where we are today, 2023?
As of 2023, we would quickly say that, value addition has found a very strong footing in the great Indian market.
Okay.
If you look at the prosperity indices of the Indian at the top of the pyramid, far exceeds the prosperity indices of the Indian at the bottom of the pyramid, even for that matter, the middle of the pyramid. So, every product that you offer, which has got a value-added feel, is going to work well. For Reliance, I think what's happened internally is, of course, a complete revival of interest in being the one dominant mega company in the country. And Reliance is, to an extent, in a race with the Adani Group in many ways.
Right.
I think the Adani Group has set the pace as to what pace really is. The Adani Group has proved what is real growth and what is stupendous growth.
Right.
To grow at that kind of a pace, Reliance will have to have a foot. Every Indian home, only a foot, needs to have many other body parts in that Indian home activated and captured. I think milk, FMCG of every kind, of course, when geo platforms happen, ability to deliver it every nook and cranny of this country. I think Reliance is investing in everything. It's investing in the product, it's investing in the service, it's investing in the ability to percolate that service through its mobile phone network. I think at the end of the day, Jio is a telecom product.
Yeah.
Jio will be a platform, a network which delivers. Jio can be a milk tomorrow. Jio can be an oil tomorrow. So over a period of time, I think they have a great brand name and they're living up to it. Jio is equal to live, to an extent, living it.
Okay, living it. Jio, that seems to be Harish's message here, that it's likely going to be the Jio brand which Reliance capitalizes on. Harish, before I let you go, I just have one final question from you. We saw in the evolution of even Amul in the early part of this millennium, we saw that Amul had also experimented with a lot of formats, like it had the pizza chains running. We were just showing visuals of that some time back. And it had a chocolates business which wasn't doing very well until 2017, 2018. And it took a long time for Amul also to reinvent itself and reach a stage where it knows what are the products which it wants to focus on. Do you think management at Amul, at Nestle's India dairy division, at Mother Dairy would be on the drawing board trying to outpace Reliance already, come out with newer products, newer brands which can woo consumers, or do you think that's going to be all effort in vain?
I think some of the bigger companies are not going to invest in this space because they've suddenly realized that the biggest one of them all is investing in the space. And I think they will wait and watch. The lesson to learn in dairy is the early settler does not gain. It's the later settler who gains on the learnings of the early settler.
Okay, the late settler, Rakesh, that seems a little counterintuitive, right? People say first mover advantage sort of sees you through, in the life cycle of a business. Here we are talking about maybe a late settler. Do you agree? And in case it is a late settler which may sort of, unsurprisingly storm the market with its products. What are some of the lessons that Reliance should learn from the history of India's white revolution?
I think they need to stay focused on each and every piece in the ecosystem. If they just look at pricing as an external factor, I mean, as a management tool, or innovation as a management tool, they will have to invest deeply in the back end, as you started off by that question. I think that's going to be extremely critical, because it's such a diverse set of people that controlling them, first of all owning them, and then controlling them to a dividend for the dairy entry is going to be not an easy task. But two very important pieces which are very so easily identifiable with Reliance or any global company which has succeeded is scale and speed. I think Reliance has made a virtue of it. So in that sense, I think it's going to be an interesting time to watch. Agar Desh doodh peeta hai, to now Reliance and Jio have joined the bandwagon. And when Harish was talking about the variety of services from jewelry, now Jio Financial Services, there are already reports that it's going to be a big bet. Mr. Kamath is driving that, at the back end right now. We haven't heard exactly what they're going to do. They have a license for a bank. They haven't really opened it up yet. And there are also reports, there's no visibility exactly in terms of their authenticity, that Reliance will be the back end company and Jio will be the front end company.
Right.
So, the whole branding architecture would probably rest with Jio, while as RL is the listed company.
Right. So I think the game is very easily moving on from PO glass full to Geo glass full.
Oh, that's an interesting.